They said I was worthless. My own brother laughed when I received an inheritance that seemed like a joke. But as the dust settled and the tears faded, I realized something. That house, that so-called burden, was actually my way out. The road to rebuilding myself was right there in front of me, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I was sitting in the dusty old office, my palms clammy as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The air felt suffocating, thick with tension. My brother, David, sat beside me, lounging in his chair like he owned the place. His smirk was almost unbearable. In front of us, the lawyer, a thin, disinterested man in a formal suit, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the cold indifference in the room. It was as though the very air had grown heavy with the injustice about to unfold. I had always known that David would get something better than me. He had always been the golden child, the successful businessman who had everything handed to him, and I was just the quiet one, the one who spent her life buried in books, working as a librarian, always in the background. I knew my grandmother loved him, but this was a slap in the face. The lawyer began reading the will, his voice flat, monotonous, almost detached. To my grandson, David Stianov, I leave my penthouse apartment in Silverstone, a 3-bedroom flat, fully furnished, ready for him to move in. David's lips curled into a smug grin, and he raised an eyebrow at me. His eyes flicked toward me for a moment, full of contempt. It was as if he were savoring the moment, the victory over me, as if he were reminding me of my place in this family. The favoritism was so thick, I could almost taste it. My breath hitched, my heart sinking as the lawyer continued. And to my granddaughter, Samantha Stianov, I leave my house in Woodford, along with all its surrounding land and outbuildings. Woodford. The name echoed in my head, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Woodford was the village my grandmother had come from, an old, decaying town with little more than a few crumbling houses. I had visited it only once as a child, and I barely remembered anything about it. A falling-apart house. What was I supposed to do with that? David burst out laughing, the sound ringing in my ears like nails on a chalkboard. Well, Samantha, at least you got something, he sneered. Don't forget to sell that junk, or the taxes will eat you alive. No one's going to want that place. His words hit me like a punch in the stomach, but I stayed silent. I couldn't speak. How could I? The humiliation, the anger that burned deep inside me, it was too much. How could my grandmother have done this to me? Why did she think I was so worthless, so insignificant, that all I deserved was an old, crumbling house in some forgotten village? When I left the lawyer's office, still reeling from the words in the will, I stepped into the brisk air of the city, but the cold didn't faze me. It was the heat that burned in my chest, the anger that had begun to simmer. The stifling tension was replaced by something heavier, a sense of betrayal, a feeling of abandonment. Outside, I saw James waiting, standing by the car, his arms crossed, his face twisted in that all-too-familiar scowl. I could already feel the storm coming. I forced myself to approach him, swallowing the lump in my throat. It's done, I muttered, not even bothering to greet him properly. His eyes narrowed as he studied me. The silence between us was thick with unspoken judgment, without even a trace of sympathy. He spoke, his voice cold, biting. A house in the village, he scoffed. Are you serious? Samantha, do you even realize how pathetic that is? I flinched at the words, but I refused to let him see how deeply they cut. I had endured years of his criticisms, his constant reminder of how I was never good enough. But this felt different. This felt like the final straw. You know what, I don't need this, he continued, his voice rising, frustration evident in his every word. Can you do anything useful for once in your life? You were always the one with the dream of becoming something. What happened? A house? Are you kidding me? What kind of future is that? And you didn't even get anything worthwhile. His eyes, usually dull with disinterest, now burned with contempt. His words stabbed deeper than any insult from David. They tore through the fragile layer of hope I had managed to hold on to for so long. Every failure, every moment of being less than what he wanted me to be, came rushing back. I had given him my best, but it was never enough. He was never satisfied. Before I could speak, before I could defend myself or explain how hard I'd tried, he interrupted me. Enough! I've had enough of this. You're dragging me down. His voice had the finality of a judge's gavel. Pack your things. I'm done with you. I'm done carrying your weight. The words hung in the air, suffocating me, choking the life out of the words I never said. I stood there, paralyzed for a moment, before I finally managed to find my voice. James, I whispered. But it was no use. He wasn't listening. His mind was made up. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I wouldn't let him see me weak. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing just how much his words had torn me apart. Without a word, I turned, walking back to the apartment we had shared. I gathered the few belongings I had left. It was surreal, packing my life into a suitcase, knowing that this was it, the end of everything we had built, everything we had. In his eyes, I had ruined. I left the apartment that night, the door closing softly behind me, and in that moment, with nothing but a small suitcase and an overwhelming feeling of emptiness, I realized that I was completely alone. The bus ride to Woodford felt like an eternity. The world outside was a blur of gray skies and endless, barren fields. Every bump in the road jarred me back to reality, reminding me that I was far from the life I had known. I stared out the window, trying to push aside the burning questions that refused to leave my mind. What was I doing? What was I hoping to find in this forgotten village? I had no answers, only the need to escape, to distance myself from the suffocating weight of the life I had left behind. I had no plan, no clear path forward. The only thing that felt right in the moment was putting as much distance as possible between myself and the wreckage of my past. The city felt so far away now, its noise, its expectations, its judgment. Here, in the quiet of the countryside, I could be anonymous, I could disappear, even if just for a little while, and find a space to breathe. I had only visited Woodford once as a child. I could hardly remember the village, but I could still picture my grandmother's house, tucked away at the edge of the town. It was a small, crumbling place, but there was something about it that had always felt comforting. She had been the only one in the family who ever truly made me feel seen, heard, understood. When the bus finally rolled into Woodford, the first thing I noticed was the silence. It was thick, like the village had been frozen in time, untouched by the bustle of modern life. The houses were worn and crooked, their paint peeling in the wind. There was no energy here, no rush. The air smelled of damp earth and old wood, the kind of smell that made you think the village had long been forgotten by the world. I stepped off the bus, dragging my suitcase behind me, the weight of it heavy with both the things I carried and the things I had left behind. I looked around, unsure of where to go. The streets were empty, save for the occasional old man sitting on a bench, watching the world pass by. The sense of isolation hit me hard, but I kept walking. This was where I had to be. This was my only option. I walked down the narrow, overgrown path that led to the house, the one I had inherited from my grandmother. It stood in the distance, barely visible through the tangled mess of wild vines and broken fence posts. As I approached, the house looked even worse than I remembered. It was more than just old. It was as though it had been abandoned for years. Yet, despite its disrepair, there was something oddly familiar about it, something that called to me. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped up to the front door, my fingers trembling as I reached for the handle. This was it, the beginning of something new, the though I didn't yet know what, but I was ready to find out. As I stepped through the creaky front door of the house, a rush of emotions overwhelmed me. The years had not been kind to this place. The exterior, covered in layers of peeling paint, seemed to sag under the weight of time. The garden, once neat and tidy, had long been overtaken by wild overgrowth. Yet, despite its dilapidated state, there was something oddly inviting about it. It was as though the house, despite its decay, was holding on to something important. I slowly moved through the dim hallway, the smell of dust and old wood filling the air. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet, and I couldn't help but think of the many generations that had walked these halls, leaving their imprint on the house, even if it had been forgotten by most. There was an undeniable stillness here, as if the house was waiting for something or someone to return. I moved through the rooms slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. It was all so unfamiliar, and yet, in some strange way, it felt like home. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice calling out to me, urging me to explore, to look deeper. Then I found it. A small door, tucked away behind a faded tapestry in the back corner of the living room. It was hidden, almost as though it had been intentionally forgotten. My heart raced as I reached for the handle, the rusted metal cold against my skin. The door creaked loudly as it opened, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into what seemed like a forgotten space. My curiosity got the better of me, and I hesitantly made my way down the steps. At the bottom, I found a room unlike any other in the house. It was a library. The shelves, stretching from floor to ceiling, were packed with books, some bound in leather, others in simple paper covers, but all of them looked well worn, as though they had been cherished. I ran my hand along the spines, each one telling a story of its own. The room was small, windowless, and dusty, but there was a sense of quiet reverence about it, a sense that these books were not just pages bound together, they were treasures, each one holding a piece of history. I stood there for a moment, my fingers tracing the titles, my mind reeling with the possibility of what I had discovered. My grandmother had always loved books, but I had never known the full extent of her collection. To think that all of this room full of knowledge, of family history, had been hidden away for so long, it felt like I had stumbled upon something monumental. In that moment, I realized something profound. This house, despite its crumbling walls and broken windows, was more than just a piece of property. It was a key to unlocking the secrets of my family, to understanding the legacy my grandmother had left behind. I wasn't just here to escape my past, I was here to discover who I was, to find out what had been waiting for me all along. As I stood there in the dim light of the library, a strange sense of both awe and dread washed over me. The books, the endless shelves filled with pages upon pages of stories, histories, and knowledge, it was overwhelming. Yet, what caught my attention wasn't just the collection itself, but a small, leather-bound notebook tucked behind a row of thick volumes. Its cover was worn, as though it had been handled countless times, and my heart skipped a beat as I realized it might hold something important. I opened the notebook carefully, feeling the weight of it in my hands. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink slightly faded but still legible. It was a letter, and as I began reading, I immediately recognized the handwriting. It was my grandmother's. "My dear Samantha," the letter began, and I felt the warmth of her voice in the words, even though she had been gone for years. "If you are reading this, then you have finally arrived at the place where I have left something just for you. It's difficult to explain, but I know you will understand. The house in Woodford was never meant to be a burden. It was meant to be a gift that would, I hope, help you find your way when the time came." The words sank deep into my chest, and I continued reading, my fingers trembling as I turned the pages. "You see, Samantha, I always knew that David would follow a different path. He was always focused on the future, on building his empire. But you've always been rooted in the past, in family, In history, I left you this house not as a form of punishment, but as a means to connect with our ancestors, to understand the deep roots that run through our bloodline. I could feel my chest tighten with emotion as I read on. My grandmother spoke of things I had never truly understood. She had always been the one to remind me of the importance of family, of remembering where we came from. But now, with her words, I was beginning to grasp just how much she had wanted to pass down. David has always been more concerned with the material world, with wealth and success. The letter continued, and though I love him dearly, I knew he wouldn't understand the significance of this house. He would have sold it, moved on, but you, Samantha, you've always had the soul of a historian. I know you'll appreciate this place. Even in its broken state, it holds more than memories. It holds our family's history. It holds the stories of those who came before us. I believe you are the one who can restore it, not just for yourself, but for all of us. Tears began to well up in my eyes as I read her words. It was as though my grandmother had known exactly what I needed, even though I hadn't realized it myself. She had seen my pain, my doubts, and had given me this house as a way to reconnect with who I truly was, a way to find meaning, to find my place in the world. The letter ended with a final line that made my heart swell with a mixture of sorrow and hope. I trust you. Samantha, you will understand, in time, that this house is not just a building, it is a piece of us. It is your inheritance, not just of property, but of love, history, and memory. As I finished reading, I sat there for a moment, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I wasn't just standing in an old house, I was standing in the middle of my family's legacy, a legacy that was now mine to preserve. I realized, then, that this house was never a burden. It was a gift of understanding, of connection, and of the opportunity to rebuild not just the house, but myself. The days that followed were a blur of discovery and reflection as I walked through the old house, feeling the dust and cobwebs of its past. I could hear my grandmother's voice echoing in my mind, reminding me that this place held more than just crumbling walls. It held memories, history, and the possibility of something greater. Slowly, I began to realize that I had more than just an inheritance of bricks and mortar. I had inherited a legacy, a responsibility to preserve it, to protect it, and most importantly, to find my own place within it. Each morning, I would wake to the quiet of the village, the chirping of birds replacing the bustling noise of city life. It was a stark contrast, yet, somehow, it felt like exactly what I needed. There was a certain peace in the stillness, a peace I hadn't known I was searching for. I wasn't just escaping the pain of my past, I was being given a chance to rebuild, to start fresh, but this time, on my own terms. The first few days were difficult. I had no experience in restoration, no knowledge of how to fix a house that had clearly been neglected for decades. But there was something about the challenge that sparked a fire in me. The more I worked, the more I felt a sense of control returning. I was no longer the woman who had been pushed aside by her family, ignored by her husband. I was Samantha Stianoff, and I was determined to make this place my own. I spent hours cleaning, scrubbing away years of grime, peeling back layers of neglect. Each little improvement, no matter how small, filled me with a growing sense of accomplishment. I had never thought of myself as capable of such work, but here, in this house, I found strength I never knew I had. The dust, the decay, the exhaustion, it all began to feel like part of the process, part of the journey of reclaiming something that had been taken from me. I began to make plans, not just for the house, but for myself. I wanted to restore the house to its former glory, but more importantly, I wanted to restore myself. I wasn't just fixing walls and floors, I was rebuilding my sense of self-worth. I was proving to myself more than anyone else that I was capable, that I was enough. The library became my sanctuary. I spent hours there, poring over the books my grandmother had left behind. Each page was like a window into a past I never knew I had. a glimpse into the world that had shaped me, the legacy that had been entrusted to me, and slowly, as I read, I felt a shift inside me. The anger and resentment that had festered for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet understanding. This house, this village, it was where I was meant to be. I wasn't just running away from my past, I was running toward my future. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was long, and there would be obstacles I hadn't yet anticipated. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. I felt strong. The house wasn't just an old building anymore, it was my home. And I wasn't just fixing it, I was fixing myself. And so, with each passing day, I grew more determined. I would make this place my own. Not because I had to, but because I finally realized I deserved to. I was no longer the woman who had been discarded. I was the woman who was finding her place in the world, and I was going to make it count. The transformation of the house mirrored the transformation within myself. What had once seemed like a crumbling relic of the past was now taking shape, slowly but surely, into something beautiful. Every day, I woke up to the sounds of hammering, scraping, and the occasional sigh of exhaustion. The walls, once sagging and faded, were now alive with color, with life. The furniture I'd restored gleamed with a new sense of purpose, and the rooms, once dark and oppressive, now felt warm, welcoming, full of possibility. It wasn't just the physical restoration that mattered, though it was the quiet changes that were happening inside me. I could feel myself shedding the old skin of doubt and insecurity, the years of feeling like I wasn't enough. Each brushstroke, each moment spent bringing this house back to life was a moment I spent learning to believe in myself again. I had stopped seeing myself as a failure. As the woman who had been cast aside by her family, I had become someone capable, someone strong enough to tackle whatever challenges came my way. There were moments when the weight of it all would hit me, the isolation, the uncertainty, the fear that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the right path. But those moments were becoming fewer and fewer, replaced by a sense of peace, of pride. I was finally doing something for myself, something that no one could take away. This house, this village, was my new beginning, my fresh start, and it felt good. I had become part of the community in ways I had never expected. The locals, who had once looked at me with curiosity and a little skepticism, were now becoming familiar faces. They offered help, advice, and sometimes just a listening ear. It wasn't the bustling city life I had known, but it was something different, something real. I no longer felt like an outsider. I felt like I belonged. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and gold, I realized that this was it. This was where I was meant to be. The house, the village, it was all coming together, not just as a place to live, but as a home, in every sense of the word. I had rebuilt something far more important than bricks and mortar. I had rebuilt my sense of self, my confidence, my belief in my own worth. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I had taken control of my life, my story, and it was beautiful. And then, as I sat there, taking in the stillness, I felt something deep inside me settle. This was my victory, my triumph. I had turned my back on the life that had hurt me and built something new, something strong, something worthy. I wasn't the woman who had been abandoned and forgotten. I was Samantha Stianoff, and I had found my place in the world. 36 p.m., is 11 to 2025. This was my new beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The journey of Samantha reminds us all that no matter how difficult our past may be, we have the power to rebuild and reclaim our lives. At some point, we may feel lost, abandoned, or underestimated, but it's important to remember that our worth is not defined by others' judgments or the challenges we face. True strength comes from within, and it's never too late to start fresh, to rebuild what was broken, and to find the courage to live for ourselves. Samantha's story shows us that embracing our roots, acknowledging our past, and believing in ourselves can lead to a fulfilling and meaningful future. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.